Okay. Okay. Friends, first I must start before I come to the topic which I've been given, one nation, one election. I must start with my homage to Comrade Sitaram Yechuri. I think the book also has a small piece that I had written about him. It's very difficult to talk about somebody you have known for 50 years who is younger than you, and then you have to speak about him or write about him. What we'll really miss is his smile, which is there at the cover of the book, is always his willingness to engage with any subject, and his energy, his ability to get along with different kinds of people, and also act as a cementing force in the alliance which we needed to build against the threat that is there today for Indian democracy and the Indian people. And I think the biggest loss we all have suffered is the fact that that binding force which brought different sections of people together today faces a different challenge after he's no longer with us. We have to see how we can carry that legacy of uniting the largest sections of the people against the kind of forces of darkness that at the moment threatens us politically, with divisions, with attacks on minorities, attacks on dissent. All of this is what we need to combat. And at this juncture, missing Comrade Sitaram Yechuri is going to be a huge loss for all of us. On the question of the topic which I have been given, one nation, one election, let me start by saying this is perhaps one of the weakest slogans that the BJP has presented for itself. They started by saying that they are going to have essentially, if you look at the 50s, the RSS, the slogan was Hindi, Hindu, Hindu Rashtra. Let's be very clear. That's what the RSS stood for. And that still remains its plank. They want a nation where Hindu identity should be the foremost one. That is why when Mr. Modi won as a prime minister, he did not talk about winning the election for the BJP. He said it's a victory for the Hindus after 800 years of colonial rule. Where does 800 years come from? Not from the British. That's not who they were fighting. It's really the start from essentially Muslim rule in India. And therefore, for them, the anti-colonial struggle was not against the British, but against Muslims and against also a secular constitution which came into the country post the independence struggle. We did not get this constitution as a gift from anybody. It is Indian people's struggle for a secular India, which is what is embodied in the Constitution of India. And from the beginning, whether it comes to rights of states, when it comes to right of minorities, when it comes to right of languages, the BJP from the beginning has taken a position that one language should unite India, and that is Hindi. It's not able to get its way, is another matter, for various reasons which I'm going to touch upon. But their argument is India should have not English, but Hindi as the language which should be their only national language. Of course, as you may know, that all the languages in India are national languages. It's not that the English and Hindi are only two national languages. All the languages of India which are recognized in the constitution are identified as national languages. They are the only ones in which official work of the government can be done, of the central government can be done, but they do not have any separate status than other major languages like Telugu, like Tamil, like Bengali, and so on. So this basic idea of a nation which can be heterogeneous, which can have multiple languages, multiple religions, all of which can coexist in one nation, was something which is in a sense unique in the world. We must understand that this is not something which came from Europe or it came from any other part of the world. So those who think, like the RSS claimed when the Indian Constitution was drafted, that this Constitution was imported from the British or the Americans or the French. That was their statement. Organizer has those articles which anybody can go and see. Ambedkar was attacked vehemently, made fun of, and it was also written there in their writings that constitution, India's constitution, should have been based on Manusmriti. So that is where they were coming from. And compared to that, the Indian constitution is the only one which thinks of a nation as a multinational nation, multiple national identities. Of course, the Soviet Union did have that character, but that fell apart later. But multiple nationalities, multiple languages, and with this, we were trying to build a nation which would then be able to give expression to each of these identities within the larger matrix of an India. Now, how did this come about? And I think this is very important for us to understand the context in which the Constitution is drafted, the context within which the British were kicked out of India, and the context within which this attempt to have an independent nation with multiple identities represented on it was created. And that was created essentially by the national struggle. The struggle of the Indian people against the British was the unity which brought the Indian nationhood, brought the Indian Constitution into being. It is not a gift of the Indian National Congress. It was not a gift of Ambedkar or Nehru. It was a gift of the people who had fought the British for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and brought the identity of the national struggle into being through the formation of the Indian state. You can see the boundary of India is not the boundary of British India. That included Burma, it included Sri Lanka. Of course, we know about Pakistan, and we're leaving that out for the time being. But the British India had a much larger boundary. That was not the boundary of the Indian national movement. So what came into being was really the Indian national movement's fruition, the fruit of the Indian national movement, which was our constitution.
ముందుగా నేను జోహార్లు అర్పిస్తున్నాను. మనకంటే చిన్నవాడు, మనకు సన్నిహితుడు అయినటువంటి వాళ్ళు దూరమైనప్పుడు వాళ్ళ గురించి మాట్లాడడం చాలా కష్టంగా ఉంటుంది. సీతారాం యేచూరి ఆ విధంగా ఒక ప్రత్యేకమైన స్థానం, ప్రతి వాళ్ళకు కూడా అందుబాటులో ఉండి ప్రతి సమస్య మీద కూడా భావాలు పంచుకోవడానికి, వినడానికి సిద్ధంగా ఉండేటటువంటి ఒక వ్యక్తి. ఈరోజు మనం దేనికి వ్యతిరేకంగా అయితే అన్ని శక్తులను కూడా కలపాలని భావిస్తున్నామో, ఈ శక్తులన్నిటి యొక్క సమాహారానికి ఒక బాణిగా, ఒక గొంతుగా, ఒక అనుసంధానకర్తగా ఉన్నటువంటి వ్యక్తి. ఈ దేశంలో ఉన్నటువంటి అల్పసంఖ్యాకులు, అణగారిన వర్గాలు వీళ్ళందరికీ కూడా ఒక గొంతులాగా ఉన్నటువంటి ఒక వ్యక్తి సీతారాం యేచూరి. అటువంటి ఆయన దూరమైన సమయంలో ఈ పుస్తకాన్ని మీరు తీసుకొని వచ్చారు. ఆయనకు జోహర్లు అర్పిస్తూ నేను మొదలు పెడుతున్నాను. అసలు అంశంలోకి వెళ్ళే ముందు ఈ విషయంలోకి మనం వెళ్తే బహుశా బీజేపీ, ఆర్ఎస్ఎస్ల యొక్క నినాదాలన్నింటిలోకి అతి బలహీనంగా వాళ్ళు తీసుకున్నటువంటి నినాదం ఒకే దేశం, ఒక దేశం ఒకే ఎన్నిక అని. ఎందుకంటే వాళ్ళ మామూలుగా చెప్పాలంటే మూలం ప్రకారం హిందూ రాష్ట్ర అని చెప్పి ఉండాలి. వాళ్ళు తప్పకుండా వాళ్ళ భాషలో వాళ్ళు దాన్ని చెప్పాలంటే హిందూ రాష్ట్ర అని చెప్పి ఉండాల్సింది. దాన్ని ఒక దేశం, ఒకే దేశం, ఒకే ఎన్నిక దాకా రావడానికి చాలా కారణాలు ఉన్నాయి. మీరు మోదీ గెలిచినప్పటిది కనుక మీరు గుర్తు చేసుకుంటే మోదీ ఏమని చెప్పాడు మొదట్లోనే, 800 ఏళ్ల తర్వాత ఈ దేశంలో హిందూ సమాజం విజయం సాధించింది అన్నాడు. 800 ఏళ్ళు ఏంటి? 800 ఏళ్ళు ఏంటి లెక్క? వాస్తవానికి స్వతంత్రం నుంచి అయితే ఒక లెక్క, లేకపోతే 800 ఏళ్ళు అంటే ఒకటే లెక్క. మొఘలాయిలో లేకపోతే మహమ్మదీలో ఈ దేశంలోకి వచ్చి పరిపాలించిన నాటి నుంచి ఇప్పటి వరకు అని చెప్పి లెక్క. అంటే ఇది ఒక విధంగా మహమ్మదీయులకు, భారతీయులకు, ముస్లింలకు, హిందువులకు మధ్యలో అన్నటువంటి పద్ధతిలో చెప్పడం. దాన్నే వాళ్ళు ఈ దేశాన్ని అర్థం చేసుకోవాలి అంటే హిందీలోనే మనం అర్థం చేసుకోగలం, ఈ దేశం యొక్క ప్రతిబింబం హిందీలోనే ఉండటం సాధ్యమవుతుంది అన్న పద్ధతిలో వాళ్ళు చెప్తారు. కానీ ఇంకో మాట కూడా చెప్తారు, మాట్లాడితే ఈ దేశం యొక్క వారసత్వం రాజ్యాంగ వారసత్వం కాదు, ఈ దేశం యొక్క వారసత్వం ఎప్పుడో మనుస్మృతి నుంచి అట్లా వచ్చిందని అవన్నీ కూడా చెప్తారు. ఇంకొకటి, విదేశాల నుంచి వలసవాద వారసత్వంగా ఉన్నటువంటి రాజ్యాంగం మనకు వద్దని చెప్తారు. ఇవన్నీ కూడా చారిత్రకంగా సరైనవే అని కనుక మనం చూస్తే ఈ రాజ్యాంగం ఏ వలసవాద వారసత్వం నుంచి మనకు రాలేదు, భారతదేశ ప్రజల నుంచి, భారతదేశం యొక్క ప్రజల పోరాటం నుంచి వచ్చింది. కానీ ఏ దేశంలో ఇన్ని భాషలు మాట్లాడతారు, ఇంత సాంస్కృతిక భాషాపరమైన వైవిధ్యం ఉంటుంది. హిందీ అన్నది ఒక్కటైనా ఈ దేశంలో? హిందీ ఎంత జాతీయ భాషో మిగతా భాషలన్నీ తెలుగు అయినా, తమిళమైనా, ఇంకోటైనా ఇవన్నీ కూడా రాజ్యాంగబద్ధంగా అంతే జాతీయ భాషలు. హిందీ ఎంత జాతీయ భాషనో ఇవి కూడా అంతే జాతీయ భాషలుగా ఉన్నాయి. ఇంకా కాదు విదేశాల నుంచి వారసత్వంగా వచ్చింది అనుకుందామంటే ఎక్కడుంది? ఫ్రాన్స్లో ఉంటుందా, లేకపోతే ఇంకో చోట ఉంటుందా? ఈ విధమైన వైవిధ్యభరితమైనటువంటి సాంస్కృతికంగా సుసంపన్నమైన దేశం ఇంకోటి ఏముంది? సోవియట్ యూనియన్ ఉన్నప్పుడు ఉండేది కొంత భిన్నమైనటువంటి వీటన్నిటితో కూడా అందరికీ కలిసిన ఇప్పుడు అది కూడా లేదు. కానీ భారతదేశానికి సంబంధించినంత వరకు ఈ రాజ్యాంగాన్ని ఎవరూ ఇవ్వలేదు. ఇది కాంగ్రెస్ ఇచ్చిన కానుక కాదు, లేకపోతే అంబేద్కర్ ఇచ్చినటువంటిదని కూడా కాదు. ఇది భారత ప్రజలు స్వాతంత్ర పోరాట క్రమంలో సాధించుకున్నటువంటి, తమకు తాము సమర్పించుకున్నటువంటి ఒక విలువైన పత్రం భారత రాజ్యాంగం. అందువల్ల భారత రాజ్యాంగాన్ని కాపాడుకోవడం, దానికి అనుగుణంగా నడవటం అన్నది వీళ్ళకి ఇష్టం ఉండదు. కాబట్టి దీనికి రకరకాల పేర్లతో చెప్తున్నారు. ఆ క్రమంలో ఇప్పుడు ముందుకు వచ్చినటువంటి వాళ్ళు అనుకోని విధంగా, వాళ్ళకి ఇష్టం లేని విధంగా తప్పనిసరిగా వాళ్ళు తీసుకొచ్చిన నినాదమే ఈ ఒక దేశం ఒక ఎన్నిక, ఒకే దేశం ఒకే ఎన్నిక అన్న నినాదం.
I would come back to the Indian Constitution, which came out of the struggle of throwing the British out of India, the national liberation struggle in India, and point out the unique features of the Indian Constitution. It recognized multiple national languages. It recognized the linguistic diversity of India and gave that space in the Constitution itself. The second, it also recognized that certain communities have been oppressed, marginalized for a very long time, and they face therefore certain kinds of inequalities which will not be erased simply because independence has come and our development might take place much more than under the British. Therefore, specific provisions that those who have been oppressed communities will have to be given space, which will have to be given protection, and therefore constitutional protection for them was also foreseen and put in the Constitution. The scheduled castes, the scheduled tribes have protection, and they have therefore certain privileges, rights in the Indian nation for the fact that we have oppressed them for maybe a couple of thousand years. So that is also recognized in the Constitution. It is also recognized in the Constitution the right of worship, whatever you want. That it is not, Constitution does not give privilege one religion over another and allows the freedom of religion to be there. So these are laid down in the Constitution. On the question of states, language, whether they should be linguistic nations or linguistic states, that needed a much longer struggle. And in fact, Andhra played a very important role in the formation of linguistic states, which also, of course, was what gave rise to Tamil as a language, assertion of the Tamils that they will not accept Hindi as a second language to be imposed on them. All these language struggles that took place in India is also because each language has been given a certain status in the Constitution. So what stands out to me, if I look internationally, this is a unique nation. A nation of this size, which is divided in some sense by religion, language, but united as a country. This is a unique nation. China, even if there are many languages in China, they have one written script which unites them all. Most other countries in Europe fought about 400 to 500 years of war to become linguistic nations. The two world wars between Germany and France, which are thus joined, was fought over one, what would be considered in India a district, Alsace-Lorraine, whether it should go to France or it should go to Germany. And they fought two world wars. They call it world wars because all of us got involved. It was really British India using Indian soldiers to fight the Germans in Africa and in West Asia. So all of this meant that there is a bloody history of nation formations that have taken place in Europe. Of course, we know that Africa was basically divided into countries by drawing lines on a map. That's all that they participated in. That's why Africa still remains today a troubled continent, because that's how they were divided. Latin America, of course, became free out of their national struggles against the Spanish and the Portuguese. But all of this, if we take into account, India is a unique experiment where we have this multiple identities, yet one nation. And that is what even today the BJP and its other, shall we say, alter ego, the RSS, cannot stomach. Because in their understanding of the nation, what they have is a nation which is an ethnic identity with one language, one ethnicity. And that's really what German nationalism was. And if we know, that's what Nazi Germany really represented. That one nation, all other identities to be wiped out, either physically or otherwise. So this is the other identity of a nation which is superimposed on different parts of the world by the ideology which saw National Socialism, Nazi is National Socialism is the unfortunate word they used, that is Nazi Germany as their, basically as their idol, their ideal concept of nationhood. And this is what we are fighting, because we owe our nationhood to the struggle of the Indian people for independence, which united all sections which today represent India. So, how does the BJP try to disrupt the original identity of India which came out of the national struggle? They don't talk about colonialism. They don't talk about the British. They don't talk about how we are subjugated as a nation. What do they talk about? That we are going to teach the world now as Vishwaguru. What we'll teach is another matter. But all this so-called ideas that they parade before us, the international politics is a very simple one. We'll use Kautilya's Arthashastra. Our enemy's enemy is a friend. Now that is difficult because we live in a globalized world. We trade with most of the world. It's not that we have chakras and around chakras you have other countries and then there is another chakra which is Kautilya's Arthashastra. It's 2000 years old. We have to move beyond that in the age where communication unites the entire world. Ideas travel very quickly. So what do they have for us in this context? They are talking about, it started with one, what? This love for one. What is the love for one? One leader, one nation. That's how it started. It didn't start with one election, one nation. It started with one leader, one nation. And that is how Mr. Modi became basically the one leader in their concept who was going to lead the entire nation. Well, along with that, other slogans have also been given. As I said earlier, it was one language, one religion. That didn't work, so now it's one leader. The one leader has weakened. Let's face it. The last election, one leader didn't work. Without the bomb blasts which took place before the 2019 elections, we don't know what would have happened, but that was something else. Yes, the bomb blasts, the attack on the Indian soldiers, that did rouse nationalist sentiments, and that may have played a bigger role in the election than we thought. But without getting into this kind of electoral analysis, it's clear that all the attempts to centralize power with the central government, which they have done, with all the attempts to see that electoral funds are only available to them, electoral bonds being obviously the instrument, all of that still in this election did not work. The one leader slowly became not a figure of fun, but his charisma became weak. He no longer was a vote-getting machine that the BJP thought he was. In fact, towards the end, various voices from the ground started making fun of the great leader and the great promises he was making. All of this meant that they now need even some more new slogans. So the old tired slogan of one country, one election. Now what does it really mean? I'll go into that after the translation. I'll address the topic that has been given to me. But before doing that, I thought I should lay down the background within which we need to examine this.
చాలా విలక్షణమైన భారత రాజ్యాంగం ప్రపంచంలో ఏ దేశాలకు లేనటువంటి ఒక ప్రత్యేక లక్షణం మనకు కల్పించింది.